He's back. The one and only Sacha Stone. You wonder who he is? Are you kidding me? Have you never seen this man before? If you haven't, I'm going to let him tell you who he be. Sacha Stone, welcome
Well,
back, friend.
good luck on that because I'm not selling anything, babe. So I'm not going to be going there. But very happy to see you, my tried and tested friend. Good to be back with you since August of last year.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you've been so busy. We were supposed to get on a few weeks ago and it just went bonkers. You rang me and you went, "Oh my God, I can't do our broadcast today because I'm meeting with the King of Kings in Africa." Do you remember?
That would have been true because I got back here 2 days ago from to Mexico to my base here, and by the grace of God, I'm staying in one place for six full weeks for the first time, literally in years, Danny. I'm in one place for 6 weeks, and I can't tell you, it feels very very grounding already. But I have touched down in 12 countries since 23rd of November when I left Los Angeles. I counted yesterday how many countries I actually landed in. It's insane. But it was a very, very propitious African tour. It was done by road, multiple countries. And we're building something forward, which I'm making announcements about later this year. Well, I say later this year, it'll be within the first half of this year. I'm very excited about that. But travel is a thing of the past for me right now.
Brilliant. Now, I know you just said that you're going to make announcements later on in the year, but it's me, Sasha. I'm not going to tell anybody. Give me a little bit of insight into what you've been doing all across Africa, please.
So, in the simplest terms, what I've been doing with my team in Africa and the US is working on since 2024. We've been focused on this, and this is building forward what I'm generically referring to as the New Earth economy, and it's to do with an exchange. You could call it a stock exchange, an exchange, a treasury, a bank, and a coin. So it's a kind of a confluence of these primary pillars of emancipating humanity, starting with the meek inheriting the earth. That is by what I regard as the new earther. How do we excise ourselves or extricate ourselves from the kingdom of the devil? Well, we can continue to have a tea party in a prison cell under statutory law and provision, pretending that we're free and sovereign because we're jacking off on social media or talking up UCC or talking up, hashtag fuck the government. That's all good. But until we control our own economy internally, we are always going to be subject to the wiles and the fancies and the thermonuclear warheads of the parent corporations. So that's why I head down and in a huddle since 2024 in this area. So it's abstract, but I can say that I've got a world-class team together. And when I make announcements, I believe it's going to be the thing that we've been waiting for. So I don't want to be more cryptic. I don't want to be cryptic, but I can't be less cryptic than that for the moment. I think all things being equal, by the time I do the Conscious Life Expo in late February, I should be in a position to make public announcements, but I'll be given the green light or not. We're in the middle of a geopolitical theater of pandemonium right now. Every day we're seeing strap lines. Today's happens to be Venezuela this week, and next week it's Mexico and the cartels, and the week after it's some other chosen theatrical production. But it's all indicative of the fact that we are in a psycho-civilizational, geopolitical, socioeconomic, and cultural pandemonium and meltdown axis shift. How do any of us, you and I included, navigate through this pandemonium? By finding our dead center in the living moment, right here, right now, wherever you may be, not folding in or leaning into the theatrical and sensationalist narratives of better bulk up on fucking dry bread or baked beans because we're going into thermonuclear Armageddon. Yes, that's a timeline probability, as the hippies are inclined to call it, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying bearing witness is to move into the immanent moment in the living present and say, I am bearing witness to the unfoldment of the geometry of revelation as it relates to Alpha and the Omega of my life in this vector of so-called time space. What does that mean? It means that I am not going to participate on the black or the white of the checkerboard in any way, shape, or form. I'll conduct pure truth and right action in the living moment, and I will bear witness to the shittery that's going on, but not participate in it. So by withdrawing life force from the theatrical production on the binary checkerboard of life, I am no longer participating in the dialectic, but instead I'm moving into conjunctional coherence and conjugation with the divine flame, which means that my will becomes manifest next as the next outcome. And that's the piece I believe that humanity needs to learn, not in the spiritualized sense, but in the very pragmatic sense of reclaiming full autonomy and sovereignty and not allowing your life force to be leached upon by propaganda, by false narratives, scarcity economics, war, disease, all of that stuff. That's where I'm at right now.
That's beautiful. And to the audience watching, when I said to the audience earlier, who is Sacha Stone? Well, that right there, that delivery, that owning self, that standing in, as you said, the present moment of self, sovereignty. It's so beautiful to realize in this chaos that none of us have, we've never been here. Nobody has ever, ever, ever been here ever on this entire planet, not one person. It's we're navigating brand new fuckery across the world. And it is, how do we deal with this without going into panic and becoming part of the loosh farm of scare and fear and all the rest of it? So it's really, really quite lovely. When you were going across Africa the last weeks, months, who was there anybody in particular or a particular place that you went? I know you went to Malawi as well. Anywhere in particular that really touched your heart, place and person?
I suspect you know the answer, which is why you're asking the question. But I did take an odyssey, what I regard as something of a Herculean odyssey, across the inland sea there in Malawi, which is Lake Likoma, which is vast. I can't remember how long it is, 400 odd miles and 50 odd miles wide, and it's fed by 12 rivers, and it is a sea. And on one side abuts Mozambique, on the other side Malawi, and there's a couple of islands, one of which is the biggest one, Likoma. And I'd heard about Lake Likoma, and that this is a treasure, just the most unique paradise, paradisical place. But to get there, you have to suffer a 20 or 22-hour odyssey on a ship that has been sailing for almost 100 years. And it's frankly, a very dangerous ship, a very dangerous boat as far as I'm concerned, captained by a wonderful man, designed to take a couple of hundred people, and had 777 people on the boat, traveling for 22 hours through a storm, I'll add. Fucking throw Moby Dick in there, why don't you? And it was rat-infested, cockroach-infested, the stink of the bowel of Hades, and it was the most beautiful and enlightening experience in a sense, in as much as that it was so, it was such a compression of souls in a given venue who were inescapably trapped. And in the hold of this ship, as you climbed up the side from a fishing boat into the ship, babies were being passed up by their arms up 3 decks. Literally, a stranger leaning down, pulling the babies up. Things that could never pass muster anywhere in the world. Incredibly dangerous. You clamber up, you get into the boat, and you're literally trapped inside a kind of dungeon with grills, and you get lost in a sea of bodies that are literally pushing up against you. You can't breathe, you can't see 6 inches from you, and you've got to somehow swim through a body of human beings to get to the stairwell, to get up to the next deck, if you can make it, and then up to the next deck to the top. So it was pandemonium. It was classic Africa in that sense. Abject pandemonium, very dangerous and panic-stricken. People were in panic. There were people punching other people. It was a horrible melee, and yet it was beautiful. And it was beautiful because here am I for the last year talking up New Earth Africa initiative and what it is that we're bringing to Africa and building with beautiful souls in Africa, including hereditary leadership and governments. And we have got to scour the basement. We've got to see what it feels like at the lowest ebb. And that was it, being crushed into a situation like that, which normally would be so claustrophobic, I'd have a major panic attack and lose consciousness. But I found my center in these hundreds of people crushed in. There was panic going on. Too many people being loaded onto the boat. It's the only ship that travels on that little inland sea. And I thought momentarily, this is a do or die moment. Either I start screaming and try and claw my way back up to the hole that I just climbed in from and get back down onto a fishing boat and then ask them to get me the fuck out of Malawi, or you be in the immanent present right here, right now, and you fucking live by your own credo, Sacha Stone, and find the perfection in the geometry of the living moment, especially if the living moment is absolute chaos and smells like shit, human shit. And I did. I saw it, and it was fantastic. And I thought, this is it. This is as bad as it kind of gets outside of a war theater, albeit I grew up in a war theater, so I have that experience as well. But getting into that and then eventually being retrieved and pulled through this mass of people and taken up onto the deck and breathing and seeing light again took about 12, 13, 14 minutes to get through this insane crush, which could have killed people. It's like one of those football things that happens when people go mad, this kind of, collective cloud takes over and this crush happens and all of a sudden 27 people are declared dead. I get how that happens totally because it was in a scenario like that. But coming up onto the deck at the top and just beautiful and black night and stars and I couldn't sleep in the cabin. There's only 2 or 3 cabins on the ship, and we had, of course, booked one months before, or weeks before. But I couldn't really sleep in it because of the cockroaches and the rats, and the stink in there was just too compressing. So I went out onto the deck and spent the 22 hours largely rolling up cigarettes on the deck and just being in that geometry of the living moment. Now, this is the thing. Getting to where we were going to, Likoma Island, and disembarking into this paradise on earth. Okay, a bit of pandemonium, a lot of motorbikes and, hustle bustle Africa style, and then being taken across the island to the New Earth land holdings that have been negotiated and prepared as a beautiful living sanctuary, residential sanctuary, healing center, retreat center, kind of an epitomization of the whole New Earth metric that we've negotiated with the hereditary chiefs of the island. And that's all moving forward beautifully now. But when I arrived at that location on the motorbikes and saw the beach and walked onto the beach, it was literally the most beautiful beach idyllic setting I've ever been on. And I've lived for 20 years in Bali, one of the most beautiful places on earth. I've been to paradisical islands around the world. This is next level, not least because it's pristine, it's sweet water, it's like a sea, it's white sand beaches, it's bougainvilleas and baobab trees on the beaches and weaver birds and eagles and just incredible. And I sat there for, I think it was 4 days, something like that, didn't want to leave. And then went to meet the chiefs and start tying up, the procedures there of engagement, and then had to take the ship off again. But I can tell you that there is a private airstrip just behind the New Earth land there, and we will be bringing people in by small planes from both Mozambique and Malawi. But we'll also be getting a big boat ourselves, a speed boat that can make that journey in 3 to 4 hours and not a 22-year-old hell on earth crossing. But once that's done, I believe we found a place that's one of those primal Edenic templates of renewal for the earth. So not many people will experience it initially, but it's one of those places that we just have to anchor as part of the greater field architecture that we are engineering into place with the New Earth sanctuaries and New Earth havens and New Earth micronations.
That's fantastic. And what a journey. I mean, it conjures up so many images, imagining what it must have been like in that hull and the smell. I wouldn't have survived. I would have been retching and throwing up everywhere because I've got a terrible gag reflex. If I so much as get a whiff of something stenchy, I'm not the strongest in the world. But it's just so lovely to hear these different things and trials and tribulations and, ending up in the beauty of the place. I caught a glimpse of that video you're talking about where you were on the beach and you were so somewhat refreshed and renewed and so happy and so vibrant there because these places, they do source your soul, nourish your soul, and lift you up. I'd like to know more about what were the chiefs like? Did they meet you in their kind of authentic dress? Like, could paint for us some of those scenarios and conversations.
Well, no, I mean, when I was meeting with the King of Kings, the Litunga, a week or 10 days, 2 weeks earlier than the Lake Malawi trip, that was a formal meeting at the palace, which I had to go in my own attire, being an extension of the royal house of Tamu in Indonesia, because I already extended the dragon staff few months back. I think it was in July. No, I can't remember. April, May, when I went first trip to meet with the Litunga, the elephant, the King of Kings, known as the elephant in Central Africa, in western province of Zambia, who owns what I imagine is the biggest kingdom in Africa. I may be wrong about that, but it's certainly autonomously. He rules supremely over that, about 130,000 square kilometers. He has a parliament, and which is known as a kuta, and 5 or 6 sub-chief kings under him who have their own parliaments and kutas. And so they have their own kind of autonomous governance structure in place, which is very, very ancient and goes back a very, very long time. But the point about that kingdom, and the reason, which is known as Barotseland, the reason why I went there initially, late 2024, and then a couple of times in 2025, leading up to this latest trip, was because that is one of the most primordially sacrosanct parts of the world, which is completely clean, not ever indentured to the hegemony of Western imperial interests. I mean, there's a bit of a story there, but the point being, the Litunga has continued to preside all these centuries, and the land is clean and not contaminated. The water, the Zambezi River, which is a huge river, beautiful river, with hundreds and hundreds of islands in the river, some of them many, many kilometers in span, white sand beaches and lagunas, and just it's paradise. And it's never been invaded. It's never been explored in that sense. It's never been experienced. So you feel almost as though you're back in the pioneering days. Livingston and Stanley back in the days. Well, Livingston stopped up by the Victoria Falls and didn't come further down. If you keep going down from the Victoria Falls down the Zambezi for another day or two, you're going to come to Barotseland, and which leads you to the Sioma waterfalls or the Ingornie waterfalls. And that, to me, is ground zero in the crucible of Africa, the dark continent. I grew up in the country of Victoria Falls. I was there as a child multiple times. I know Africa well. I've never been to Barotseland, and it was when I was kind of dragged there almost by folks who said, "You've got to come there. That is the new earth, and that is where it needs to be seated in Africa, and you must meet with the Litunga, with the elephant." It was a hell of a hard task getting to meet him initially. Fortuitously, we get on terrifically. He's an incredibly enlightened and highly educated man in his early 80s who doesn't look a day over 53. And he's got an energy, a field that protects him, the royal court, and the people of Barotseland. It's a very small population, I think about 1.5 million people, but the country is huge, Western Zambia. So that, to me, did present itself as an optimum blank canvas, in a sense, upon which I could go in honor and in grace, and ask if they would be prepared to participate in the New Earth Africa initiative. And that took a hell of a lot of lobbying. This was not just a jump on a plane, go there, be taken to the royal court and say, "Hey, do a selfie." No, this was a very laborious process that cost a lot of money, multiple trips, multiple delegations, making the overtures, making the diplomatic overtures, and then the correct representations, and then going through all the genuflections that you have to go through in order to be brought into the inner court. And that's a hell of a process, believe you me. At the same time, navigating the right powers, so to speak, in the Zambian government, in which there's a lot of good people there as well, and good agencies and institutions and ministries. that are also progressive and prepared to be forward-looking in where the world is going to. And so that's what the New Earth Initiative is. It's a full spectrum initiative that I will make fully public by the second quarter of this year. I will definitely make it public once we launch the exchange, as I'll have to make it public. But the initiative, I believe, is the most comprehensively, holistically thought out, full spectrum initiative at the resurrection of humanity from the draconian clutches of 500 years of satanic hegemony and scarcity economics and sequestration of technology and enslavement and indentureship of the beautiful African peoples. So that is where my heart is at, being a third generation white African. That's what I'm building as the cornerstone of what will become the economy that we then transpose onto New Earth all around the world, the jurisdictions that we've been establishing, like in Tanasi. Excuse me. I had to sneeze, I'm so sorry. I think it's these flowers behind me. In any event, that's where we're at. Dani, I did make the correct overtures, and they've been accepted, and the king, the Litsungas, is very pleased about the engagement. And obviously I'm going dark at this point on. I don't wish to have any controversy. I want to just get on with the closing the negotiations and the agreements and contracts, such as they may emerge in the coming days. But we're deep in it right now, and a very big and working with the Zambian people, the Zambian government, and the people of Barotseland, working with the people in Malawi and the new incumbency there, because that government has just shifted. The government in Namibia, the government in Madagascar, in Angola, in these countries that are around Barotseland. There are about 9 countries which we're engaging diplomatically to invite them in to what you call a multilateral treaty event, which is circumscribing a protectorate around the New Earth Africa Initiative, which is to do with ending scarcity economics, bringing back true cost economics, as my belated late friend Robert David Steele was trying to espouse to the world, which I'm taking that mantle forward in a real practical way. And that's to do with #hemp everything, in simple terms. I'm working with industrial hemp industrialists in Africa. They are my ground floor partners, also with 3D printing technologies that can print houses and buildings, the latest state-of-the-art Chinese, Russian 3D printing technology, which we're working with as partners. We're taking it forward to creating micro-industrial zones in these countries that have cast and mold, extrusion, and 3D printing capability, so we can feed in the pulverized hemp microfibers and hemp mixed with basalt and lime and different material sciences to make the most perfect, beautiful bioresonant building material. So it's kind of like an angelic concrete that now becomes the new build material. We can make bricks and floor tiles and things that look like wood, planks and bamboo. Anything like that can now be literally fabricated out of hemp, and the hemp will be locally farmed. And we've got, I think, approaching 20,000 farms in alliance across Africa, connected to our big industrial agricultural partners, who will also push the hemp out into these farms once the legislations are in place. And that's already started shifting, largely in part thanks to us and the overtures I've been making to the parliaments about hemp. I've gone in and done presentations to finance ministries and to parliaments and shown them in less than an hour in boardrooms how white imperial hegemony and the oil and gas gangster barons back in the day introduced the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act precisely in order to destroy the hemp industries. It was fuck all to do with marijuana. It was everything to destroy the burgeoning hemp industry at that time in the 30s, which was about to take America and other countries into a vertical economy. Because hemp, you can literally manufacture anything and everything out of it. It's the best food for livestock. It's the best building material on earth. It's the best tarmac to pave roads. You can build rocket ships out of it. You can build telephones out of it. Hemp graphene, hemp silicon, hemp ceramic, hemp fibers. It's all hemp oils. It's all in one sacred plant. that was gifted to us by the stars, incidentally. And that's a story that's fascinating. And that one plant can grow pretty much anywhere in the world, pretty much locally. And then you break it down using the hemp trains, which is a kind of industrial unit that separates all these different components. And right there, you've ended 95 to 97% of all foreign imports to that country in Botswana or Malawi or Zambia or Zimbabwe. That's it. It's over. So all of those cheap, hot products coming in, no disrespect, China, elsewhere, end them. Because we can make wheelbarrows and ladders and bicycles and motor vehicles and iPhones out of hemp, locally farmed, locally processed, locally manufactured. So that's true cost economics brought down to the ground floor through the New Earth Africa Initiative. And that's only one pillar. The other pillar is aerospace and introducing airship and bringing airships back. And we've already got 2 orders from one of the governments in Africa. And we're in league with the leading Israeli group who manufacture airships, and they're very keen to do a technology transfer. We have our own industrial designers who have already designed and built airships and are in that field. One of whom, the lead designer, incidentally, is the great-grandson of Hugo Eckner, who was the commander of the great Graf Zeppelin. So it's in a family tradition there. It's a very exciting story. But bringing airships back is in tandem with the hemp industry is critical. Why? Because in 1937, not only did the satanic draconian elements bring in the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act by buying Congress and destroying that global industry of redemption, they also took down the Hindenburg in 1937. That was the big 9/11 psyop of the day. And bringing down the Zeppelin that day, or the Hindenburg, was what destroyed the burgeoning airship industry. At that time, it was taking off again vertically. Cheap, beautiful way to travel around the world for logistics, for cargo. It would have eradicated so much of the oil and gas hegemony of traffic, exhaust fumes and oil and gas and gump fuel and tarmac, asphalt, all of those petrochemical and then agrochemical industries became dependent on the eradication of hemp and the takedown of the latest form of travel, which was airships back in the 1920s and 1930s. So that's all part of white conspiracy that can be attributed to these same devils. And I teach that again to these governments through the New Earth Africa initiative.
That's so wonderful.
But there's a lot more than that. There's aerospace, like I said, there's breakthrough quantum technologies, which we've been incubating for years, and I'm very much involved in that field. But I need jurisdictions within which we can practice, build, manufacture, and distribute those technologies. Right now, good luck manufacturing a little free energy device and seeing if you can get it on the shelf in Walmart or in Amazon. Not going to happen, baby, and I'll tell you why. Because compliances and regulations and statutory law prohibits technologies getting onto the shelf that don't conform and comport to so-called health and safety standards, which is a cock and bull story, and also with statutory compliances, UL certification, CE certification. So we are cock-blocked from getting anything that can serve humanity and emancipate us. We are prohibited from getting them onto the shelves in the emancipated West. Go figure.
Yeah, it's insane. I love to hear the work that you're doing with hemp and how hemp is coming back and how we, the people, are bringing it back regardless. I mean, the people that have been holding off, hiding everything behind the doors, they are so getting mown down and moved out of the way because
Yes.
it is the time of the people. And, in America, the story there was when the hemp industry was destroyed, and of course, people were taken out of the game as well because there's millennia of people using hemp. As you said, the greatest product on the planet, the most versatile, and it's just so incredible. And they then, brought in all the cotton fields apparently after they, gotten rid of all of the hemp. I mean, it's evil on evil, but the truth is coming out, and the same truth like Tartaria. I know Tartaria has other names as well, but you talk about the airships and bringing that back, and how easy it was to rope an airship on one of the beautiful towers, one of the beautiful structures. There's ancient pictures of it, in books that they weren't able to burn. Ooh, some of the books that survived. And it's so lovely. And there's the whole of the free energy. I don't know why they call it free. Well, because we don't have to pay for it. But, the story of the electricity, the trick about the telegraph wires, the electricity wires. And I mean, every single thing is coming out and people are paying more attention. They definitely are now. It's more exciting. There was a woman going around saying that my husband says that Tataria is a myth. I'm like, oh, my love. Oh, my love. No, no, no. My husband said so. Sit down, Poppet. Sit down. How can you deny the global beauty of these incredible buildings everywhere and technologies that have
Well,
all been
I can answer that. You can bypass it through civilizational cognitive dissonance, and that's to do with synthetic molecules intervention at the level of blood chemistry. So and then the endless propaganda, of course, through academia and through mainstream media and through the entertainment complex. So the propaganda, as well as the synthetic molecules that have invaded our minds, we are incapable of being able to engage these stories that don't comport with a very binarized worldview, which is very much an installed software. So that explains that piece, doesn't it? But God bless Edna and her husband who believe that Tataria is a myth. It's just a travesty that people can move through any city, whether it's Stockholm or Chicago or London or Edinburgh, and you move through these cities and you see everywhere the forensic evidences of these so-called churches, steeples, cathedrals, which are capacitors, all of them. Cold electrification and resonance capacitors, that's what they are. It's what they were designed as, it's what they are built as. And that chapter of our history is a travesty. That's something I'm going to be speaking to in the talks that I'm giving this year. I've decided to give a very special focus on exactly what it is we're discussing here and how that piece of lost history was a very, I guess, relevant and necessary backward step, which was foisted upon us by the draconian forces in order to try to sustain a catastrophic blow to humanity at the level of the Gestalt, precisely in order to prevent our emancipation through the 2012-2020 crossover, which we've now moved through, moving into the biological ascension event, as I would loosely call it. But those forces, off-world, intra, supra, sub-dimensional elements and forces have for a very long time, going back actually thousands of years, known that they need to work toward a prohibition of the human technology activating. And that's why we saw that piece of omitted history, because it was a very necessary backward step imposed by those forces. Now, as we, humanity, the emerging new human, is bombarded by the emergent the photon vibral light that is now maximizing and hitting us. And that's the astrophysical phenomenon, which is well attested, incidentally. This is not the woo-woo. This is the new age. So hashtag fuck anyone who disses the new age altogether. The new age brought a lot of good stuff out of the closet, which had been sequestered by old Atlantean logic connected to the monotheistic religious mind. So let's not diss religion, let's not diss, or the scriptures, let's not diss a new age. There's good stuff in both. But the point being, Dani, that stealing of history, that theft, that heist, was a very necessary backward step by those darker elements to try and prevent the ascension event, in very simple terms, and it failed.
Absolutely, and that's the most joyful thing. Despite all the suffering that people are still enduring right now, ultimately they failed, And I always say that when we're in this 3D element of life on this beautiful sentient planet, we're all inside the story of our life, our experiences, story, experiences shared and whatever. And then as we go up multidimensionally, then the stories are relevant. We're moving in different ways, but for each level or each plane of existence, there has to be meaning. There has to be something that we can kind of relate to and make work for us. But the more that we're like up and out of the energy, nothing of this matters. Nothing of this pain or torment matters. Where at bliss, it's the spiritual, beautiful connection that's just so joyous, and everyone has ability to be there in the moment every single day that they put their attention on it to help them, just endure this very stressful time that nobody has a compass for and nobody's been through before. I know that a lot of these satanic Luciferian occult ding dongs running the planet themselves are in terrible trouble. They're all turning on each other. They're sharing each other's secrets because they've lost ground and it's all coming down. I interviewed a wonderful politician today. His name's Andrew Bridgen. He went to visit my friend, Dr. Rainer Fulmich, my friend, who was kidnapped in Mexico, abducted. And
I know Rainer very well.
Yeah. And he is just the best man, Rainer. And he sent me a message from prison the other day. And he sounded so robust and strong. And he's like, I'm going to get those bastards. I'm like, oh my God, listen to you. We've been so worried about him, obviously.
Good.
Andrew Bridgen went to visit him in purpose. And I take my hat off to Andrew for doing that.
Absolutely.
Andrew was also telling me that during his time in Parliament, and he said that the corruption is just so unimaginable. Now, we know that on the outside, but he broke it down. God, Sacha, it was such a depressing video, but it needs to be put out there because the way that he lays it out, like, there'll be something to vote on or lobby on. And there was one man who's part of the Labour Party who would just not even get into the details of what they were voting on, but voting as the government dictated. And they're at that level of the removal of the soul, the heart, the integrity, everything in order to maintain, pension. And Andrew's lost everything. He was a very wealthy businessman. He lost his pensions, his property, everything. But good people like him, we need them to bring the grounded, inner circle that none of us would ever get to see. It's just incredible. I wanted to ask you, I want to give you my thought on something first. I'm a bit scared, but okay, here we go. So Trump, however people feel about him, love him or hate him, depending on which lens you look at him through, you can see him absolutely bringing in the New World Order, or you can see him doing the most beautiful, amazing things. But I keep looking at him and I keep seeing like Alexander the Great, let me conquer the world and bring all the, you know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on his current activities?
So, I moved directly against my beloved friend David Icke, who I adore beyond measure in this world. But I rather suspect that I would come at it from a complete counterpoint to David. And I respect David implicitly on everything, including, incidentally, his take on Trump. However, as you rightly said, it depends on the lens through which you view this. And I'm choosing, rightly or wrongly, to look at it through the lens of my felt and lived experience. Not only connected loosely with elements in the Trump circle and the Trump family over many years. Number one, that is felt experience and lived experience. And that cannot and must not and should not be eclipsed by conjecture or speculation, no matter how compelling it is. So there is that piece there, which I'm very, very comfortable with. There is also the fact that I knew who Barack Obama was a year before he came into power, 2007 into 2008, and I was screaming it from the rooftops. I knew who and what the Clintons were a very, very long time ago, almost 20 years ago, and I was screaming that from the rooftops. Certainly by the time I got to the UN, 2009, 2010, I already knew everything about the CGI, the Clinton Global Initiative, and how it was the surreptitious technology installed into the United Nations to buy out the basement of NGOs and IGOs. I then, of course, infiltrated in that sense and became a director general in the intergovernmental sector, renewable energy and innovation technology being my kind of portfolio. And I did not take a salary, as you know, but for 2 years I was in there. And yes, I produced the Millennium Development Goal Awards on the floor of the General Assembly in the UN, and I wanted that forum. I wanted that engagement, much as I despise the MDGs. I wanted to get that forum in order to then bring some light into that place and learn myself about what was really going on in the basement. Because I was solicited by them, not the other way around. After 2 years, I was so disgusted, I left, and I'd learned everything that I needed to learn. And I then moved against that UN thing and started speaking fairly openly about the issue at stake. And subsequently, I've been accused of being an inside job because of my involvement at that level. But bottom line is, Donald Trump is the counterpoint to that whole insidious, nefarious language and narrative that I saw going on 20 years ago in my hard and deep forensic work connected to intelligence, connected to the super infrastructure in the financial system, the hereditary leaderships and the hereditary collateral owners and holders from Russia to Indonesia to Africa. I've been involved 20 years, since 2005, deeply in that world, which is also about to see some epochal shift, incidentally, in the next few short weeks. Redemption, real redemption, monetary redemption at that level. Trump is systemically disengaging, dismantling, and disenfranchising the satanic globalist status quo. He's doing it by riding in the center of it. I don't believe for 1 second that he's going to give us up to Lucifer. I don't believe that for 1 second. I think that what just happened in Venezuela, my take, hold your own counsel, my take is that it was a very, very good, propitious and needful exercise. I was trying to explain that to some people who called me this morning to get my comment on Venezuela, because I was quite conflicted when I heard that that was taking place. And I immediately, part of me, reflex and went, this is wrong. This is a violation, a breach, an abrogation, a derogation of international law, of the Global Compact, of the UN Charter, or, all blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, whoa, back up. That's exactly why it was the right move. Because Trump is now declaring war against the protectorate, the technology which protects the globalist agenda, the status quo, which is aspects of international law. And the machinations of international treaties that have been orchestrated, engineered, and struck historically and in recent years, precisely in order to create a kind of chaos buffer zone to protect the satanic status quo from doing what it's doing anyway, which is principally, as you know, connected to harvest of humanity, blood sacrifice, adrenochrome harvesting, human trafficking, child sex abuse, gold running, gun running, drug running, and so it goes on. The big picture being, of course, the enslavement and indentureship of good human beings all around the world through the technology of the corporation, the parent corporation, which is the registration certificates and the birth bonds, death bonds, all the rest of it. So that alpha omega enslavement of humankind and of all the land on the surface of the earth and the waters is what is held in a satanic kind of black magic witchcraft. It's a cacophonous interfolding of law, of contracts, of treaties, of history. That needs to be detonated, imploded, completely collapsed. Donald Trump, in my view, through my lens, is absolutely categorically doing that. And I think he's going to continue doing it. And I think it's going to amp up in the next few months in a way, unheralded proportion, which to many people of the more timorous and liberal intellectual persuasion are going to think is apocalypse, and he is the devil incarnate, delivering us into the apocalypse. No, I believe he's detonating all of the satanic infrastructure, and he's doing it on their playing field in broad daylight. And he is bypassing as and when he feels it necessary, or when we talk about Donald Trump, let's talk about there is an echelon connected to Donald Trump, and it's not Benjamin Netanyahu. Trust me, that is not the issue here. Okay, Netanyahu is a fucking sock puppet, just like the rest of them. Donald Trump is not a sock puppet. There is a difference there. And my hope here, Dani, is that Trump and Putin are in alliance. behind the diplomatic curtain. Certainly he can't be seen to be, nor can Putin to some extent. But Putin, I still maintain, is an archangel incarnate. I absolutely maintain that, and I know for a fact that history will bear that out, so I'm not worried about it. My own experience of Vladimir Putin is predicated on over 20 years of observing every move that man has made, and his syntax and his words, his speeches, unscripted. When he speaks, the man is in absolute flow. I said the same thing about Donald Trump. Trump's language is a lot less sophisticated. His intellectual, in that sense, intellectual gymnastics are not as sophisticated as Vladimir Putin, but are every bit as brilliant in terms of the delivery. So I'll end my little rant at that, but certainly at this stage, I am so far pretty pleased with what I'm seeing Donald Trump and the body blows that he is delivering to the satanic globalist elite.
Mhm. Well, it certainly looks like that is what he's doing again, depending on the lens that you view it through. And it's such an emotive subject. People, unfortunately, in their programming, that they can't accept that they actually have the mass global MK Ultra programming that every single one of us has been exposed to, bar none.
Yeah.
The minute that you hit a subject like Trump, they'll judge you completely, no matter what you've done. If you like him and they don't like him, you're out. And that's okay. I think people are waking up. I've been saying to people, stop picking a fucking side.
Yeah.
Because if you talked about David Icke, right? I love him. He's coming on my channel this week with our beautiful friend Kathy O'Brien. Yeah. So David is very, very stern on his beliefs on Elon and Trump, and that's fine. I love him. I adore him. You know, he's speaking at my conference. He's coming on my channel. I'm not going to not speak with him because he doesn't like Trump. He gets to be that. He gets to say that, because at the same time, you know, we've got to advocate for our own selves, what we think when we're wrong, as I have been, you know, own it, apologize, and move on. But, you know, there's people out there trying to lead and say, choose a side. And if you're not with me, you're against me. What kind of intelligence is that to say that?
It's the kind of intelligence, Danny, that is still trapped in the Saturnian logic, which is called binary logic, which is the dialectic of black and white, sun and moon, he and she, and it's a nonsense, and we've got to move beyond it. There is truth as a synthesis of the black and white of the checkerboard, but truth only becomes known through the lens of the actualized or activated human heart, so to speak, which is the psionic heart. I'm talking about the true center of knowing in a human being, not the emotional heart. But those human beings who are able to pull themselves back from being drawn into the fist fight are able to observe with clarity and see what fucking morons are on both sides of the aisle. Because anyone situating themselves with the yellow hat or the red hat is involved in a dialectic. You're a diminished being, which is why I have no foundational respect for politicians, much less for anyone who acts as a third-party intervention. Politics and politicians and governments are third-party intervention. Fuck them, get rid of them. Banks and bankers are third-party intervention. Fuck them, get rid of them. Doctors, hospitals, and nurses, outside of the ones who are doing real care, like trauma care, what have you. Fuck them, they're also part of the problem. All good doctors and nurses agree with me, and I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds over the years connected to all the COVID stuff that I was involved in frontline activism. So the fact of the matter is that the medical profession has become third-party intervention, intervening in our capacity to actually heal. Banks stand between us and our money. Teachers stand between us and true learning. And spiritual gurus, hashtag fuck them too, also stand between us and our emancipation. So any third-party intervention needs to be eradicated. That is the baseline. And those poor dimwits who get pulled into the fuckery of binary logic are just caught up, as you say, loosh, fodder for harvest. So let's not dwell too much in our concerns about people who are holding fast to this or to that. They're both just as foolhardy as the other.
That's right. And, you know, those that, you know, there's a propensity for some humans, they're so lost in themselves, they haven't done their inner healing, they don't want to look at the shadow work. And it is a journey that we all must endure. I truly do believe that in order to be free as a being, to do that work, to face everything. But there are some people that will attach their life, their limb, their soul, literally to a person that they believe is going to lead them into something or other. And it's like, you know, all the Luciferians that their God is Satan, of course. that they actually believe that all the promises that Satan has made to them, that he's going to keep. Of course he's not. He hates. That's what he does. He hates. But it's so interesting seeing all of the different people turning themselves around at this time. And, I would so love for them just to take a deep breath and chill the fuck out and really look
Yeah,
around and be honest with
I'd
themselves.
also, I'd also like to add, if I may, on behalf of my fellow men, that I'm getting a bit tired about this notion that Satan and Lucifer is a he. Um, why do we obsess on this gender bias that the devil is a he with a great big cock and testicles? I haven't seen his cock or his testicles. I know that Baphomet has tits. That much I know. But anyway, I'm taking the piss. But I do also think that we should move beyond this. I'm beginning to get offended every time I hear about Satan being relegated to a he. It's actually a fact that in the cosmological myths of the world, the greatest force in the universe, connected, which is attested to by literally thousands of cosmological stories of creation and the myths of creation connected to different tribes and cultures all around the world, archaeohistorically. And I know because I was the one who conducted this study from the University of Georgia in Atlanta, United States, years ago, to establish what is the primary generic creation myth. And amongst all of these tens of thousands of tribes and cultures around the world. And the one common denominator that came back was that it's a female presence. It's a matriarchal female spider at the center of the black hole of the Milky Way. There you go.
Wow, yeah, yeah, I heard that too. No, that's brilliant. It's really brilliant. You mentioned briefly earlier, one of the things I love about you is that nobody owns you. You're no one's bitch, just to be direct about it. And that's really admirable, and especially at these times as well, because there's nothing about you that's for sale, and you're very strong in that. And you will punch out if you feel you need to, and you do it with words, and it's very, very, interesting to see. Now, what the hell was I going to say? Damn it, that keeps happening. Old friggin' lady brain. I can't remember what I was going to ask you now. I
It
was,
was a really important question, Danny.
it was, it was Sacha Stone. All right, let's spend a minute on. I wrote loads of things down, but let's spend a minute on what I consider the Muppet Tony Blair. Came out this week saying we need to know who has been vaccinated. What are your thoughts on him and who he reports into?
What we all know is an abject war criminal and always was, always has been. My own conjecture on the matter of Tony Blair is that he was propelled into power as a young acolyte of certain collectivist socialist persuasions, and he was taken probably shortly after his populist win as to get into Downing Street. I'm assuming, I presume that something happened shortly thereafter where he was taken into the basement, probably given cat's blood to drink, and then had something installed, had a kind of eclipse soul installed into him, because it seems to me that the man has done the bidding of the devil literally from the day he was sworn in and took power as the Prime Minister in Great Britain. He's not a compelling speaker. He's not a compelling charisma. He's not a compelling intellect. He's not a compelling strategist. He is hidden behind, I guess, the steel curtain of the Crown interests, the Privy Council, and the Crown of England. In that sense, he's been their bum boy, and he's done a pretty good job of that, I think, of protecting their interests and using his former premier status on the international in the international forums, speaking and maintaining a particular thread and narrative and agenda. How and why that risible, turgid piece of shit surfaces now, and as an international statesman, somebody of note and persuasion is beyond me. I can only imagine that they are really desperate Peter Mandelson was a smart guy. There are other people who have been smart. I don't like any of them, but how they resort or revert or default to a Tony Blair is beyond me. But then again, you only need to turn your gaze, a few degrees northwest to look at that other extraordinary piece of work, Keir Starmer. And who or what is that sweaty, pug-faced, angry school teacher? I don't know. Disgusting skeletons in the closet, to be sure. Just a sad creature altogether. I find it almost inexpressible to couch these creatures and how they got to power. Look, put it this way: there was a time, I think, when the creatures that were ushered into power had real capacity and could think on their feet and could. I think that MK Ultra, certainly in the case of Bill Clinton, and what happened to him as a child, almost certainly, and the altars that were installed into him. I mean, only speak to Kathy O'Brien, of course, our beloved friend on this subject. She's the expert on the subject. But we all know that he was heavily mind controlled. But he had a capacitance, he had a charisma. He could play the saxophone. He got on with black folk. I mean, there were redeeming features to a Bill Clinton. There were even redeeming features to George Bush Jr., who was an absolute, twat. But there were redeeming features to him. His kind of overt stupidity and clumsiness diplomatically was kind of funny to watch. It was a redeeming feature. You look at Keir Starmer, there's nothing there that is redeemable. So let's end the subject there on the subject of talking about these political creatures. Short answer, I haven't the faintest idea why Tony Blair is being elevated back onto the world stage.
Okay, brilliant. Right, we'll move along as you wish. I remembered what I was going to ask you. Earlier, you motioned to the time of Atlantis and the thinking and the yay or nay, the kind of obviously bled into the Roman arenas. Now, do you remember reading that book years ago, The Only Planet of Choice by Phyllis Schlemmer? Do you remember that book?
I don't read books, Dani, so no, I've not read a book
Yeah.
since 1997. No, short answer,
That's
don't.
about
I don't.
that's about when it came out as well. Well, there was a lot of information there that was channeled by a group. They called themselves Tom, and they were speaking very much about all the different experiments, all the terrible things that happened across Atlantis, which of course was thousands of miles. It wasn't bloody off Santorini. And so you were kind of motion to it earlier. And there's very dominant thinking out there and aggression around protecting the kind of heart of Atlantis when most of us don't even remember, but we think we do. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Where do you see that, the actions? And I think what I'm really asking you is, what are your thoughts on the Atlantean myths, and how do you see them playing out, if at all, in the arena that we're, beholding right now?
So the return of Atlantis and Lemuria into, and then you could go to Pangaea and Tara, the return of these kind of landmark archaeo-historical, I don't know, they almost certainly existed, but the fact that they're resurrecting in the collective mental landscape, I think is just a testament to the fact that we are necessarily having to return to zero. What I mean by that is that Terence McKenna, with his time wave zero, incidentally, mathematically proves this out. So anyone wanting to look into the hard forensic science of why we are remembering Atlantis now and Lemuria, why it's becoming a kind of resurrected mythic landscape, is connected to time wave zero, the collapsing of time. And as time has collapsed already, we're on the counterpoint now of the collapse point. So the collapse has already happened, but we're living in the, as I've been saying for a while, in the echo chamber. We're still suffering the repercussion of the end of time. And so there's still a large swathe of the human being, the human family, that are jointly and severally imagining that time still exists when it doesn't. And the reason why money is failing and fiat is failing and geopolitics are failing and the whole shittery of the extant political landscape is collapsing and two-party politics and democracy, all of those things are connected to this phenomenon. And with the collapse of time, you have at the same time a resurrection of the old mythic landscape naturally emerges, because as the failing software collapses, the default software emerges in the landscape, and that's what we're seeing. But it's also, again, connected to the photon cloud or the photon band that we're moving through on the outer perimeter of the Milky Way. As we swing through and past the ecliptic, which we did recently, we are being bombarded by that photon cloud, that photon band. That is a kind of cloud storage of ancient history. And as we move through it for the first time now in 13,000 years, we're moving back into that band. It is remembering to us through its storage cloud at the subtle psionic individual and collective level. It is remembering and re-imprinting us with the lost language, the lost symbols, the lost mythos, the lost stories of an earlier reality or an earlier timeline. And the overriding one at that time was Atlantis, or Lemuria and Atlantis. Lemuria and Atlantis being the counterpoint again of binary, which back in the day came to catastrophic failure. And here we are again trying to continue in binary logic, which is failing. It's a hard fail that's happening now. The emergence is the new Earth. The emergence is the new human, which is what we represent. Those of us who are fully leaning into full truth and disclosure and remedy and right action in our lives are now becoming the collective field that will define the new outcome. And the new outcome is connected directly to biological ascension and the departure from the myth of time itself, especially time as it imprinted into the waters of the cells and then triggered entropy and the belief in death and disease and destructivity. All of that becomes part of the old order as well. So as we see the mythic landscape of Atlantis reappear, it's just in order that we can see that what we've been rebuilding in the last 13,000 years and 26,000 years as this grand processional cycle continues, we have continued an echo of Atlantis with time and money and fear and scarcity, and that is what we now finally must relinquish and release altogether. So I think it's a necessary and needful remembrance of things that went before. But again, I still say that the path of least resistance to the highest outcome is to remove our attention altogether from even these mythic stories and mythic landscapes, because we're still allowing ourselves to have our life force abdicated to ideas outside of the living geometry of the living moment, which is the immanent flame, which is the only flame that can actually ideate, imagine, and create and manifest a new earth or anchor patterns of perfection to this earth. So the sooner we all get back to zero, the still point, and remove our attention from all of the noise, the propaganda, the duality, the UFOs, all of it, like see it, understand it, and enjoy the stories, but from your own perspective. Bear witness alone, do not judge. That's the point. And that's the standard tenet of any gospel or doctrine that has survived from the angelic era, is thou shalt not judge. Why? Because I am that thou art. In any venue, you and I are absolutely one and the same. And anything or anyone that presents themselves onto the screen of my life, I am the orchestrator, I am the engineer and the architect of the provenance of this meeting, this relationship, this beautiful collision of souls and of destiny and of fated karma and all the rest of it. I can never blame somebody else or someone else for this. I must own this piece right here, right now. And then I understand love. Then I understand empathy. Then I understand enlightenment, not before.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I think that's really going to land in people in a way that is really necessary right now. There's so many different people that have different ways of expression, and there's so many people that need from the basic to the very, beautiful and poetic, and but sometimes we get a chunk here, a chunk there, and a chunk here. But in this kind of great loss and mass grieving that's happening, as well as the world has changed so much and people don't really know how to navigate, I think what you just said there is really, really profound. And I think people should keep, rewinding it a little bit, rewinding the old days. But yeah, and just listen and just kind of breathe and drink those words in, because they're very, very helpful and deep and quite profound. And, yeah, it's brilliant. Well, listen, let's bring this chat to an end, unless there's anything outstanding here that else that you would like to discuss or share, especially with your work and what you're doing.
I'm good about just making announcements and pronouncements when the time is ready. Like I said, working very intensely now to shore up and consolidate the New Earth scaffolding and architecture. And we've been engineering powerful stuff in the basement. It's been a laborious and precarious journey. And on some fronts, things are going great guns, and other fronts, they're staggering, and we have to just ensure that we get into this new wave of emergent light and consciousness and geometry that is availing itself to us. I'm feeling fiercely confident about 2026, about where we're at, about everything that manifests and unfolds. I'm feeling fiercely confident about it. I'm very excited about where the New Earth horizon is bringing us, and I'm not paying attention to the more Atlantean elements, just to go back to that story. But I don't feel the need to speak to anything. I just thoroughly enjoy quantum conversations, speaking to the status quo, speaking to cosmogenetics and archaeocosmology, which is a subject of eternal fascination. Because it's the nesting of billions and billions of timelines, and the probabilities are all unknown to us. We can go back, or we can go future, we can rewind, go sideways, go in any direction. For me, bringing it back right here to the still point in the here and now, the geometry of the living moment, is where revelation reveals itself, but only provided you are in that still point and bearing witness and not participating in the dialectic.
Brilliant. Sacha Stone, you're a legend, you are, and you're much loved and much admired. And I wish you the best of the best of the best. And what you're doing, we're creating this new earth, this living, this way for people to see life very different, very beautiful, very inclusive, and very clean, is just wonderful to behold. I'm so excited to see how it creates more of itself this year, and invite you back, of course, at any point to share with us. So that'd be lovely to see you again. So thank you so much,
Correct.
Sacha.
Thank you, Dani. Much love to you.
All right, darling. God bless.